Hello, and welcome to the Proactive Caregiving Podcast. As a CPA with over 20 years as an industry accountant, Jessica stepped away from the corporate world to become a full-time caregiver for her mother. Having learned invaluable lessons along the way, she is now here to share those with you and to invite you to join her on this caregiver's journey. Here is your host, Jessica Cannon.
Hello, everybody. I'm so glad you're here with me today. I am the Proactive Caregiver, and I specialize in educating others on how to be proactive by empowering you, the caregiver. If you cannot take care of yourself, then you cannot take care of your loved ones. And along those lines, I've been seeing more early morning walkers and runners as the seasons are changing yet again. As I begin to prep flower beds, I'm reminded about what I've gleaned from gardening and maintaining indoor plants with these seasons. Finding that optimum soil content, light levels and temperature, or protection from environment kind of is similar to caregiving to me. The indoor plants are a bit more temperamental, but having indoor plants not only contributes to my overall mood, but it helped with the added oxygen in the room too. Now, I know what you're thinking. We're talking plants? Well, that's a topic all in itself. But if you can imagine that caregivers and our loved ones are a variety of indoor plants, then you might realize we need special consideration to thrive. And this consideration I'm referring to is that of our health from the perspective of our hearts, our guts, and our brains. When we're in the midst of the day plugging away at our to-do list or caring for our loved ones, the thought of our brain-gut connection is not exactly driving our day. We are in somewhat of a survival mode without even considering the best way to survive. And if we realize the stress that comes with caregiving, we can take this one step further because we may not even consider a life beyond surviving towards healthy living. Might just be trying to get through another day. I know I had to retrain myself in what healthy living looked and felt like. So today's guest is Ewan Williams, who resides in the UK, and he's also the founder of Vitalize Health and Fitness, where he has become a mood and body coach. Ewan is a coffee lover and a health nut, but he still understands on a personal level what it feels like to struggle with low energy. This kind of struggle affects our mindset, our behaviors, and overall our happiness because it's in connection with the flow of movement, sleep, and of course our choice of nutrition. Beyond his own journey of self-care, Ewan obtained a degree in sport and exercise science while becoming a qualified level 3 physical trainer and a precision nutritionist. The Precision Nutrition Certification. This is the world's most respected nutrition education program. But with this training, Ewan is able to help people not only become more physically fit, but also understand the physical and mental effects on their bodies. He goes through this by incorporating mindfulness approaches, meditation, and other aspects of physical, mental, and spiritual health to reach the root causes of poor health. He helps people like you and me go beyond an exercise regimen and begin a journey of self-discovery and healing. Because after all, we are our own best advocate when we can tune into our body's needs. So, without further ado, hello, Ewan. Thanks for coming on with me today.
Hey, Jessica. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate the intro and the kind words, and a lot of insight into how the whole body is connected to everything, and everything's connected to everything works together. Absolutely. to create optimal health, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, and I love what you're doing. Kind of helping those caregivers to take care of themselves too, because I think that's something that, I guess, taking care of someone, you kind of quite often neglect yourself in the process.
Absolutely.
So I love what you're doing in helping those caregivers do that.
Thank you. It's kind of a trial and error, and it's a lot of what I've experienced has definitely been um, beneficial, but at the same time, learning how to navigate this caregiving journey because, you know, I go from watching and observing my mother on how her day is, how long she's been sitting, her aches and pains that she goes through, and just trying to hear what's going on with her and then trying to fix things that I can't actually fix. It always takes that willing participant too. But seeing what pain points she's going through, and then I realize, okay, that's something I need to avoid. It helps me cue into things right away of, okay, this is not exactly the best way. This is a better way. Maybe tomorrow I'll start doing this instead. But it's a cycle where I had to realize the physical body and the mental body and the spiritual body, all of it is connected. And it's not one or the other.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if one's out of balance, then sooner or later another one will start to become kind of out of balance too, if that makes sense.
Oh, it absolutely does.
Mm.
Once my physical started to kind of get out of balance, then it was not long before the mental part of this started to follow.
Yeah, and that's kind of like you spoke about the gut mind connection in the intro, and how, you know, we often don't really know or make the connection between how our guts can affect our mood and our mind and our mental health. I think a lot of that could potentially be down to the modern Western way of medicine. You know, we kind of look at everything being different parts, and you have these different specializations in medicine where, you know, we kind of think that the brain, if there's something going on with the brain, it's just the brain. Whereas in reality, it could be the gut or somewhere else in the body that's, you know, creating this downstream effect of imbalance somewhere else.
Definitely. You know, and that's something that I didn't realize. Many years ago, I started having problems with gut issues, stomach. I don't even know how to put it all in one kind of ball of what makes sense. But day by day, I just kept thinking it was, you know, stress from the day of work, trying to meet demands and deadlines, and then trying to find time with family. And all this stress just kept piling up. And eventually I started thinking, well, maybe I'm just having allergic reactions to food, and starting to really limit what I ate or how much I ate. And it ended up being that these issues kept growing and getting worse until one day I thought I was in the middle of having a heart attack. And it ended up being that it was my gallbladder. My body was signaling me that my gallbladder was done. It needed to come out. And it wasn't until that happened that I really started to focus on what I was putting into my body in terms of nutrition.
Yeah, because I think, like, what kind of our gut and the inside of our body is kind of still, if you think about it, the outside, if that makes sense. Because, you know, we're putting stuff from the outside, the food and things like that, into our body, and it's coming down, you know, into the gut through the stomach, into the intestines. But they're kind of, you know, they are in your body, obviously.
Right.
But, you know, there's that barrier between the gut lining and then the rest of the body, if that makes sense. Your bloodstream, which can then bring nutrients and everything towards different parts of the body. And I think that, you know, when we're eating foods that are less than optimal, or we're highly stressed and things like that, this gut lining can become sort of leaky, and inflamed and things like that, which can then, if that inflammation gets into the body through that gut lining, then that can create inflammation anywhere else throughout the body. For example, that can cause low mood, mental health issues like depression, anxiety. A lot of the research lately shows that it's actually a lot of the reasoning behind depression is inflammation on the brain. And so that's why it can be really affected by the gut, and other parts of the body can be affected by gut issues. And the gut can be really affected by stress and other environmental kind of toxins, like the air quality and things like that. So everything kind of affects everything. That's why it's sometimes quite difficult to pinpoint the exact cause, I suppose. But then that's where I think kind of the modern way of looking at things, health-wise, is going to really, look at that testing, some physiological kind of markers and things like that to pinpoint a root cause. But then also bring in more of that bring that Western kind of testing with, the Eastern kind of mindful practices and Eastern medicine to help, integrate them together and really figure out the root cause, because sometimes that can be like stress, childhood trauma, things like that, which can then create that imbalance.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of the way forward, is that kind of testing and figuring out the root cause and how some body part can be affected by something going on somewhere else.
I'm glad you said it that way, because it's definitely before thinking Western and Eastern, they're two totally different approaches and we keep them separate, but there's so much benefit to combining them and bringing this together in our day-to-day lives. I know I've started to have a major difference once I started to look towards the Eastern development. I thought, if I have the Western side of it where it's more physical fitness and appearance driven, as opposed to the Eastern side of it that is actually more focused on the mind and how it affects the body. If we could just bring the two of them together, we would get so much more benefit out of this.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, I think a lot of the reason why, I don't want to get really political, but a lot of the reason why, the Western has stayed the Western is because, it makes money.
Yeah. Exactly.
But I think, if we can be more aware of health, and I sometimes put a hashtag on my Instagram that make health sexy, which is quite fitting. Instead of, getting ripped abs to put yourself in front of a magazine to make money, value health more than making money. And then, we'll all be healthier, happier, better to each other, more able caregivers. Right. And I think that, that would help bring humanity forward.
Absolutely. And so I'll go ahead and put it out there. The Western society is definitely more capitalistic. And if you take that and move that aside and we start focusing on what's best for us and what's better for us to how to live, and even teach our children, they will start to benefit, and it will start this slow movement, this cultural shift that a lot of the problems that we're dealing with, instead of building more hospitals and building more clinics, how about we take a different approach and focus on our inner selves? So with that thought, I'm wondering, what was that point in your life that brought you from fitness performance towards that self-discovery?
Yeah, so I can pretty much pinpoint a specific period. so I've always kind of had like an underlying anxiety, and also thinking that there's something more than like just what we can see, feel and touch and things like that, more than the physical. But yeah, so I'll go back a little bit. I've always been quite sporty, and without sounding too big-headed, I've always been able to play sport at a fairly high level from a young age. So, you know, little Ewan was pretty good at sport, probably developed this ego around that. I've always been quite good at sport and good at things. So I kind of pinned my identity on being good at things, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely.
And then, so as I grew up, got to my teen years and things like that, this anxiety was always there, and it was very social. So I really struggled to talk to a lot of people. You know, I used to struggle to talk to girls that I fancied, things like that. People of more of an authoritative figure, so like teachers, bosses, things like that. And I was used to being I'm still on this journey of self-discovery, which is interesting, but it's good. So I was kind of used to being told I was good at stuff and being good at things like sport and stuff like that. So when I wasn't good at something, I didn't know how to kind of react to that, and, you know, have that work ethic to work hard to better myself, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
So I kind of just try to push it to the side, this social anxiety. And that, you know, just doesn't solve anything. It just makes it worse. It builds and builds in the long run.
Yes.
So I kind of try to hide it with alcohol, getting pissed, you know. Getting pissed means getting really drunk in England. A few dabbled with some drugs and stuff like that, you know, and I think that was really, I overdid it because I was hiding these anxieties and things like that. But the time, so long story short, the time that I can pinpoint where my journey went from being, you know, the fitness, sporty performance side of things to looking a bit deeper and going inside, more introspective, was actually after a really, really bad experience at a festival, after doing some drugs and alcohol and not sleeping much at all. I had this severe like panic attack, and it lasted hours. It hasn't been diagnosed, but I think it was kind of some sort of drug-induced psychosis where, you know, I was hearing lots of voices and seeing things that weren't there and stuff like that, and that lasted hours. And I think since then, I've kind of had a wake-up call, which unfortunately a lot of people, that's what it takes for them to, you know, wake up and make change. Yeah, maybe it's trauma from something I experienced, like a bad experience, or, you know, maybe trauma from seeing one of your family members get really ill, or, you know, maybe even pass away unexpectedly. And then, you know, that really hits you, gives you that wake up call. So from there, it's taken a while, but I've shifted my mindset from trying to be the best at everything and being really sporty and things like that to, you know, just trying to be better within myself, incrementally at things I do. And then that's where, you know, the whole mindfulness mindset and the spiritual side of what I do has come in, really. So the fitness and the exercise and the sporty side has always been there, along with the nutrition for that. But then, the sleep and the mindset and the mental health and even the nutrition for the mental side of things came into play from that experience.
Definitely.
Mm.
It takes, and I think that's what happens. It takes those experiences for us to get that wake up call. I know I can relate to a lot of that. And even after, I think it was feeling the difference between, when you get to the point where I was used to being and almost on that, what I call the autopilot, used to being in this mode of just existence and surviving, that I didn't realize the difference until I switched over to better nutrition, and the difference in energy that I got out of it and the moods that were so much better. That was that eye-opening change for me. So breaking a cycle of, having to have a glass of wine to go to bed, and then turning around and having to have the glass or cup of coffee, maybe two, to wake up, and then maintaining the mood, or keep it from fluctuating too much throughout the day, because the not having that fuel to start the day off with correctly, it didn't help the mindset of where I was at and just trying to get through the day and just trying to function, because I had that fitness background. I loved playing sports throughout junior high and high school, and getting all the compliments of speed and endurance and just the physical abilities, and then becoming the adult and you don't get those compliments anymore. You're stuck in this cycle of meeting deadlines, and those compliments may come if you meet the deadlines on time, or you produce more, or you're the salesperson, and it's just those compliments come from a different area, which left me to find that compliment if I gave myself, like, oh, I had a good day because I didn't have as much junk food, or I had a good day because I didn't drink as much wine. I had a good day because I didn't do something that I was attaching to something negative, as opposed to saying, oh, I had a good day because I got out in nature and it was beautiful, and I had a chance to change my outlook and take that breath of fresh air out there under the sun. Or I had a good day because I started my day with meditation and really felt through some things, as opposed to rushing through something to check off the boxes.
Yeah, I love that. And back to the coffee you said you have in the morning. Love that. Maybe 2, maybe 3 sometimes.
Oh, I have to stop it. I actually gradually, this was another thing that I gradually weaned myself off of coffee and onto green tea, just because for me, I noticed when I started my day with coffee, I, for whatever reason, did not want water afterwards, or I didn't recognize that I went several hours without any water. But if I started my day with green tea, then I immediately went with glasses of water right after throughout the rest of the day. And it was just that was the difference that it made for me, was doing one thing after the other. And then I started loving teas, all sorts of teas, and trying different lemon and honey and cream and all kinds of things. It was just variety. It was changing things up, because that's part of healthy eating, as you gradually learn. And I was gradually learning what was good for my body and why it was good and how it was affecting my gut and my heart. After a while, you do get burned out on healthy foods too. So it was like, how do I change this up so I don't revert back to something I used to eat that wasn't as good for me? So the variety helps a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Variety helps, helps keep you on track, I guess, because, if we do the same thing every time,
right,
eventually you might kind of get bored of it.
Right.
Like the same foods, or, the same fitness regime or movement regime.
Right.
And things like that. So variety can really help keep us in the moment, because it's something different. So we have to focus on it a bit more. Maybe we cook a new recipe.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we're starting a new exercise in the gym or outside in nature. Because I love exercising out in nature. It's so much better than indoors for me.
I believe it.
Yeah, and if that's, because I think quite often when things get stagnant or we get bored or they get really difficult, we can often revert back to maybe older, habitual, unhealthier behaviors.
Yep.
Whereas if we can vary it up, especially with nutrition, because we need a good variety of proteins and especially plant fibers to really help feed your gut bacteria, because you have so many different types and strains, and they all feed off these different plant fibers and plant types and proteins. And having a good diverse population of bacteria in your gut is really good for your gut health. And as we know, as we've discussed, that gut health is really linked with that mind and the mood and your mental health. So having a really good diverse diet and population of gut bacteria can really help all those things: gut health, brain health, and the health of your whole body, basically.
Yeah, because that difference of gut health there, what I also noticed was the more healthier I ate and got the rich green leafy vegetables into my daily nutrition, the less I was craving other things. Like I didn't, and for me, and maybe others, when someone says, "Oh, you need to eat healthy," okay, so I have to eat more salads, and salads help with fiber, and so you're not constipated and all that kind of thought process. But to me, at first, the salad it was really hard to transition into, just because it's not that burger. It wasn't the French fries. It wasn't the pizza and the greasy, salty stuff. But the more I got away from that, and the more rich greens with the kale and the chard and watercress and even romaine, I craved that more after a while.
Yeah, and it's difficult. It is difficult at first, and these foods like the burgers and the chips and the fries and things like that, they're designed for you to love them and crave them and want them. They're hyper palatable, super processed, but really definitely not optimal for your health.
No.
Of your gut or your mind.
No.
So I think switching, from a diet high in those processed foods, completely switching it to the other side and going to, the really healthy or healthier salads and things like that can be really difficult. So what I always say is try and just do a little bit better each time, so that it's doable and sustainable for you, as opposed to making the full switch,
right?
Finding it really, really hard. And then, you do it for a few weeks and often revert back because, you're building new habits within your eating. So obviously when you're building new habits, you're going against old habits which are ingrained into your subconscious, plus the fact that these foods are designed to make us want them and crave them and feel like we're getting a reward for eating them.
Right.
Like physiologically. But once you can make that transition and make it a habit and gradually do better every few weeks, incorporating in more foods that are going to be more beneficial for your health. And with everyone, that's slightly different because we all have a slightly different microbiome makeup, slightly different genes, and the way they're expressed can alter the way we process foods slightly. So yeah, I think eventually you'll get there if you keep making these incremental additions of better food, which eventually will replace the food that's less than optimal for your health. And then you will crave the healthier foods because they're way more nutritious in the long run. So once that craving for the higher fat, high sugar, highly processed, hyperpalatable foods,
Mm-hmm.
once they've stopped hijacking your body basically for those cravings, then eventually you will crave those healthier foods because you're getting the nutrients that your body wants and needs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think a big thing is to be aware of that and have self-compassion for when you want those highly processed foods, because your body is designed genetically through evolution to want these high energy foods basically, because the way we are now, our society now has grown so fast and quickly that the way we're kind of hardwired, our genetics haven't caught up yet, because it takes thousands of years for genetics to kind of evolve and change, and it takes a lot of new generations and things like that. Whereas I think the industrial age has been around 100 years.
Yeah.
So we've sped up so much, and I think there's this big mismatch between definitely our food,
Mm-hmm.
but so many other things within our society and environment that don't quite match up with our genetics.
Right.
So from that, I think it's good to have self-compassion for, when we do eat these foods, it's okay. It's what our bodies are designed and want to do.
Right.
For that kind of that primal survival instinct. But yeah, that's why I think making that incremental change and setting up your environment for success really helps as well.
Definitely.
Yeah, for example, like leaving your willpower at the supermarket or the grocery store, and just trying to avoid those aisles in the supermarket, which are very tempting, because when that food's in your house where you spend a lot of your time, or in your cupboard or in plain sight, it's going to be eaten. It is, by you or someone else in your household.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. If it's there, then it's okay. It's going to happen. But if it is there and you still want to make these changes, you can hide them in places. Put the less than optimal foods at the back of your fridge,
Yes.
and maybe the ones that you want to eat, the better ones for you, at the front. So you open the fridge, first thing you see is the one that's going to be better for your health. Just trying to make it difficult for yourself to eat or do the things that aren't so good for your health, and make it super easy for yourself to do the things that are going to help your health.
Exactly.
Mm.
Part of that self-compassion, though, that was something that was driving me, because at the same time, trying to better my own personal health and help my body adapt after having my gallbladder removed. And then also, again, observing mom during her days and what she ate in her food, her moods after the food that she had. And then I was trying to transition her with me on the healthy food choices that I was learning to make. And I was trying to help her go with me. And that willing participant, that's very important. But understanding the difference between, this process where I started to eat better, the mood started to improve, I stopped craving some of the less desirable or more of the flat out junk foods. And then I started doing a little bit more research and understanding that these foods that we're eating are contributing to not only the bacteria imbalance in our guts, but eventually it was going to affect our hearts, which eventually affects our brains. And so that in itself helped me find that bit of self-control, I guess. And because prior to that, the only time I would give something up, honestly, was during the season of Lent. We would give up sodas or beef. For example, one year we gave up beef, and that was probably the best year. I no longer craved having beef like I used to, and I started to lose weight and realizing, and then trying to make that connection. I was like, why was that such a why did that make such a difference? But it was something that I was forcing myself. And yes, fighting those cravings was hard, but letting the process take place and letting it work and letting it go from a process to a habit, and then from that habit to the new lifestyle, and connecting
Yeah.
all of these dots, like, wow, what I put in my body is really important because it's eventually going to affect the gut, the heart, the brain, and the rest of my organs. And then once everything starts to react in a bad way, the inflammation, all this other stuff, then I'm going to start having physical body pains. And it was amazing to see and understand I'm able to make changes. I'm able to change this process that I'm going through. And instead of it just being, oh, I'm just trying to lose a little bit of weight because I want to get into a lower dress size or something silly, that it was like, oh, not only am I in that lower dress size, but I feel better and I'm not so moody and cranky. And if I'm able to help mom with this, then wow, she's not as moody and cranky either. And there's something to this. And
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like, from what you said there, you kind of pinned the why behind, the food change and the lifestyle change
yeah.
to a reason kind of, more meaningful and a bit bigger than, just trying to lose a few pounds to fit in a dress,
Right.
which is perfectly fine, perfectly okay goal.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, the motivator there is less internal and more external. So the way you look for other people.
Mm-hmm.
But your kind of values and your motivator, by the sounds of it, was the health of your body and your mother's body,
Mm-hmm.
which is a really, really deeper why, and there's a lot more meaning to that, which when times get tough, that can help you push on. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And then create those habits and that lifestyle change.
Yeah, because when times did get tough, I was able to balance my energy through all of it. I was able to maintain a healthier mood throughout all of it instead of having that emotional roller coaster. But that in itself made me realize, when I would have those cravings afterwards, it's like, well, what's going on inside? What am I feeling? Why am I craving this? I know it's not good for me, so why am I craving this? And I would go through this whole thought process of what's going on in my life, what's happening, what's causing this. And even with mom, when some random craving would come up, she'd say, you know what I feel like eating today? And she would describe something that in my mind I'm going, oh no, that's not good. Because I read a book years ago that was actually called The Journey Home. And it was a very nice blend of the Eastern and Christian world. And once you start to change these habits and find things that you're more aware of in your day-to-day life, once you start to move forward, you really can't move backwards. You shouldn't go backwards. And so every time I tried to go backwards and eat those foods because that's what mom was craving, and then trying to have a meal with her and have quality time, and just I would have the negative effects again. And so I was back into the situation where I had to make a meal for myself. That was what I needed to eat that helped my body. And then I would make a meal for her that what she wanted to make her happy. And the more I did this, the more it was this struggle, like, well, if this is healthy for me, why would I give her something that's not exactly healthy for her? And I just started making food, salads, even some little wraps. I tried to avoid sandwiches, but things that would be full of healthy, energy inducing, and seeing the difference in her, making it flavorful, because that's the other thing. I think a lot of people assume healthy food doesn't taste as good as the processed food. Like you said, it's designed a certain way. In healthy food, I mean, you really have to do this over a period of time to adjust your palate, because eating a bag of potato chips versus eating raw carrot, the obvious differences are going to be there.
Yeah, you've got the hyperpalatable, high sugar, salt, and fat content of, potato chips and burgers and things like that, which, your body loves, and the food industry knows that.
Yeah.
So they make those. But yeah, I think definitely trying to bring flavor into healthier foods is one of the best ways to help people, or help you start eating those healthier foods without feeling, deprived of nice foods and things like that. So if you look at, say, like a curry or Sri Lankan food, Thai food, things like that, how nice are those?
Oh, they're very good. Yes,
So
and
good.
that's what my palate has evolved towards. I prefer those foods now.
Yeah, I love them, and that's because they utilize these combinations of herbs and spices and things like that, putting them on these vegetables, these healthier foods, into a sauce, and it just makes the food so nice, and you're getting more nutrition from it. So I think, utilizing herbs and spices are really, really key to making healthier food taste better.
Definitely. And then on top of this, I even took it another step further. We're figuring out these healthy foods and what made me feel good, and then even taking it to the point where I was eating them. So I started trying to take my meals outside and eat them in the backyard, back porch, where hopefully, or we don't heat up too fast after our crazy snowstorm. But being outside and enjoying that nature, it just took me one step closer to that mental health. Like, now I'm going to combine the food with the outdoor nature and how that works.
Yeah, and it's like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hit combo.
Yes.
You're eating quality food. You're being mindful of where you're eating it,
Right.
which is going to help digestion, because generally when you're mindful, you eat a bit slower. You let those enzymes and stomach acid and things like that get to work, so you digest your food better, which then gets absorbed into your bloodstream better, so you get more nutrients to your body. Being out in nature, super good for your mental health. Better air quality. If it's sunny, even if it's cloudy, you're getting the rays from the sunlight, boosting your vitamin D levels. Yeah.
Yeah, it just keeps adding to it.
Right.
And that's another thing. And keep adding on top of that, and taking it yet again another step further, is after either eating outside or just being outside, those deep breaths, taking those deep breaths out in nature is so great. When I try to explain that to people, that the difference, the level of energy and the calmness that comes versus sitting inside watching TV and just breathing while you're, watching TV, the difference that you get from that, it's hard to understand unless you're out there doing it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that comes, it just comes from doing it, doesn't it? And knowing and feeling the difference, breathing in that fresh, better air quality than you do indoors, and that sense of calm when you breathe in deeply. Yeah, especially through the nose, nasal breathing. It's something I do a lot now. Quite a few times throughout the day, I just kind of, when I'm maybe feeling a little bit overwhelmed or things are getting on top of me, I just use that breath to ground myself and kind of help my nervous system calm. Because that breath and that diaphragm, when you do that deep breathing in through the nose, really helps activate that rest and digest, that parasympathetic nervous system, which then gives you that feeling and sense of calm.
Mm-hmm.
Which is something I talk about quite a bit on social media as well, and because it's such a simple thing to do in practice, but when you're in the moment and everything's getting on top of you, it's hard to be aware of how that simple, taking those few seconds, even just like 5 breaths, taking those few seconds to really just pause,
right,
be mindful of that breath, that deep diaphragmatic breathing, can have such a profound effect on the moment and how you're feeling.
It has an effect for me that's not only on the moment and the mood and just feeling like I'm re-energizing my body, but those deep breaths have even helped with my lower back pain. And these are things that I didn't realize the benefit of them. It was just, one thing after another just kept leading me, taking things one more step. And it was just like this guided path, this guided process, and feeling the benefits from everything. And once I felt good with it, then it was like, oh, this is great. I want more. I want more. And it was a different type of craving altogether. It's like I craved being out in nature. And that sounds weird to say, but I craved the fresh air, to be out there. I craved sitting out underneath my meditation tree with my bare feet in the grass, because I wanted that energy from the earth even.
Yeah, getting grounded.
Yes, exactly.
I sometimes walk around barefoot outside and get a few strange looks, that's for sure. But I know the value of it, and I know the benefit of it, so
right,
I kind of see past the strange looks. And just that being outdoors and connecting yourself to the earth, there's so many benefits to it, mentally, physically.
right.
It can help reduce the inflammation that we may have, speed up wound healing, help us sleep better, which, when we sleep better, everything gets better.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Sleep is such an important pillar of health, and the breath can really help that too.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that, because I lost sight of that when our youngest son was having some gut issues and some acid reflux issues. It was a cycle of, if he slept good, he ate good. If he ate good, he slept good. It was just AM, PM. It was making sure he would sleep good and eat good. And it was a happy balance for him.
Yeah, and then I guess vice versa. When you sleep bad, you tend to crave those not so healthy foods.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's when you've really got to double down on all the things you spoke about, like the environment and pinning that why on something a bit higher. But sleep affects everything. It's so important. Especially with gut issues, because when you don't sleep as well, that can create something, or a kind of, that gut lining can be more permeable to things that can be quite inflammatory and not healthy for us. So it really helps to seal that gut lining a bit better, among hundreds of other things. But that's something that came to mind based on the gut connection with the sleep.
Right.
So it's like how one thing can create that ripple effect,
right,
that downstream effect on so many other things throughout the body, like we've talked about a lot. Just how everything is influenced by everything. That makes sense.
It does. And that's what it comes down to, is that we get so stuck into our days that we don't realize the small moments and the small habits that could make a big difference, and that one thing affects many things, and the reaction to that other thing may affect something else totally on the other end. It's this back and forth thing, which is why I would come upon one thing that worked, and then I added on to that, and then I added on to that, and then I added on to that, and it just kept growing, and I just kept feeling better and having more self-awareness and having more self-control. And I know I can only affect so much of mom's life, but being an example for her, being an example for my sons, it's something that makes a difference to me. It's like, why didn't I learn this sooner? Why didn't I do this so many years ago? And it's like, well, I had to break some mental programming to start going in a different direction and a better direction before it was possible.
Yeah. And I think that, yeah, like you said, it all starts with that self-awareness.
Yeah.
Of when things are affecting you in a good way, or when things are affecting you in a bad way, and maybe why that is. And, it starts with that self-awareness of realizing the thing that works. Like you said, that one thing that worked for you, you built on that and built on that and built on that. And now you have all these really good habits and behaviors that you do, that are part of your lifestyle. And yeah, and you kind of feel better for it in the long term. And then on top of that, you're setting that example for your kids.
Mm-hmm.
And even if sometimes it may not feel like it, because I know you said it was sometimes difficult to get your mother to eat foods that are a bit healthier. Yeah, that you're still doing that in her presence, so that will still be, picked up on.
Yeah. Unfortunately, with dementia, one of the things that happens is they tend to crave sweet foods more. If it's not, drinking the coffee all day long, because that's one of the things that they're attached to, the bitter side of that, then it's the sweets, the other end of it. And I have my suspicions that it's the body's way of trying to get more glucose, sugar, to get some energy, because if they're so sedentary that there's not energy is not being generated through the exercise, then it's that mindless eating and snacking. And that's dangerous for me, because it's like I can't sit still. I can't sit with her still very long, because before I know it, then I'm in that mode of I'm munchy, I'm hungry, I want these junk food snacks, I want the potato chips, and it's nope, can't go backwards. I'm going forwards, not backwards.
Yeah. And it's that self-awareness of when you feel those cravings,
right,
to then realize the why. And then then that phrase comes back to you, that can't go backwards, which that's kind of your trigger now to kind of keep moving forwards, which is awesome. Like, it's really cool having something like that when those feelings come up, you've kind of put something in place that helps you,
right,
and gives you that willpower, if that makes sense.
I think part of it is willpower, and part of it is just as I become more aware of who I am and how I am, I have this nasty little perfectionist in me that learning what was better for me and then trying to find the perfect scenario, it was a different kind of willpower. It was more of a rigid self-discipline. And then it was also part of a fear. If I don't change my habits now, then I could face the same demise that mom has been facing with living with mixed dementia. And so I just felt like it's extremely important to find this level of self-awareness and mindfulness and going through this absolute change of lifestyle, because I want a different story to tell later down the road. I don't want her story to become my story. So
yeah, and that's like a big motivation, isn't it?
it is.
It's like we said earlier, finding that why, that kind of deeper why of creating that change, and that starts with that self-awareness and the awareness of that why. You don't want to have or get dementia in your later years, and you've become aware of that, I guess, and that's kind of a big why for you.
Yeah, because it's not all genetic related. It really isn't. So when you're working with your clients, what do you find is one of their, I guess, pitfalls that trying to transition? Basically, you have someone that's coming to you and they want their physical fitness. How do you connect the physical fitness to their mental fitness?
Yeah, so I really focus on the breath and the movements. So I tend to not, with the physical side, obviously now and again is really good, tend to not kind of, if someone comes to me for a personal training session or a session like that,
Mm-hmm.
I really focus on movement quality over kind of quality and intensity.
Mm-hmm.
And then coming with that, the breath and moving with the breath. So you kind of bring that mindful movement into it, I suppose. Yeah. So that's how I kind of connect kind of the
Nice.
physical side with the mind and the mental health side of things.
And I'm sure, like we said, everybody's different. And so it takes their own willpower or their own area that drives them to maintain it and learn from it and grow from it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, it's a transition. So not doing everything at once, because
Yeah.
that can get overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
And just gradually, incrementally adding in things that they want to do, that you want to do,
Mm-hmm.
and a little bit of what you want and a little bit of what you need, I always say.
Right.
So, so it doesn't feel like too much of a struggle, because making these healthier lifestyle changes is difficult, because you're going against a lot of subconscious habits.
Mm-hmm.
And with the eating especially, you're going against your biology craving those foods.
Mm-hmm. Makes it difficult going against the body and trying to convince the body what it needs. Basically detoxifying it and starting from a fresh base.
Yeah, that's it. And I think change is difficult. A lot of people don't like change.
Yeah.
The body likes to be settled. It's called homeostasis. So it tries to bring itself back to where it is, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So yeah, changing that and trying to make the body adapt to new things it's going to have some pushback at first. A good example is, a lot of, this is definitely me assuming and being stereotypical, but but a lot of older people are kind of stuck in their ways.
Yeah.
They know what they like, they know what they don't like, which is a really good virtue to have. But at the same time, sometimes that means they're very resistant to change.
Right.
So I sometimes use that analogy within the body when you're trying to make new, healthier changes, is that there's going to be that resistance. But like we said earlier, when you make it easy for yourself and make it incremental, that's way more sustainable.
Right. Absolutely.
In the long run.
So, Ewan, how do people find you if they are stuck in their routines and they need help to begin their incremental change and go with more of a fitness program?
Yeah, so I mainly use Instagram at the moment. So you can find me, the handle there is at Vitalize with a Z, which I think is the American spelling anyway,
Mm-hmm.
or the US spelling, because it looked better. Because I think here in Britain, we'd use as S. But anyway, at Vitalize Health and Fitness, that's my Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got an email, which is Ewan, spelt IWAN, at vitalizehealthandfitness.co.uk, or on Facebook. And that's kind of the main platforms I use at the moment.
Nice.
Mm.
That works. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you are looking for a change, you're stuck in a routine, or you're trying to get out of this cycle that I know I was in before, of the craving and the lack of exercise and energy and the mood swings and all of that, then I highly suggest reaching out to you and trying to get a new beginning, a new change. I mean, seasons are changing, and it's that wonderful time to start doing that little bit at a time to build on it and go in a healthier, different direction. On that, thank you so much for sharing your time with me today, Ewan. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jessica. It's been a pleasure. I love talking about these things and helping people, and I hope it's reached some people who need to hear these things and it helps them.
Right. Yes, because it's definitely going to help us go in a different direction. So thank you for joining in and listening with us today. You can find more about this topic on the blog at jessicalazelcannon.com. And I hope this gave you more food for thought. And until next time, be proactive. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for joining us today. We really hope you've enjoyed this episode. To learn more about proactive caregiving and to hear other episodes of this podcast, please visit www.jessicalazelcannon.com. This podcast is produced by Cannon Light Media, LLC, www.cannonlightmedia.com. Music provided by Chris Paradise.